So you worked on Java, microservices, and what else?
Spring Boot,
Yes,
REST
Spring.
API, web services.
Yeah, okay. So what is REST API?
REST API is one of the way through which you create a request response architecture, and basically it uses the REST architecture to for designing the API, which basically says that it should follow the maturity Richardson maturity model, uh, and it is yeah, this is pretty much it.
Okay, so what annotations you have used in this REST API? You can't hear me or what? My voice, is it low?
No, I am able to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, what annotations you have used?
In the Spring Boot, in
Yes.
the REST APIs.
No, in while creating the APIs.
You uh, you talk about
While
the
create,
like when we are trying to build the REST API through the Jersey. Is it
yeah,
so?
yeah. What are the annotations you have used?
We have used the at the rate request, at the response, and at the rate XML responses, at the rate XML requests, and mm,
So firstly, how do you create a controller? How do you create an API call? Can you just write the syntax? Can you share your screen and write the syntax for it?
yeah, sure.
I can't see your screen.
Yeah, able to see.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
can see my screen. Yes.
yeah. What I need to do?
So you just create some sample controller and then one get API call. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, what's your total experience? It's 4.5, right?
No, it's 4.1.
4.1.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you are from Mumbai.
Sorry.
So you are from Mumbai.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So that syntax, is that correct? Get request,
Mm,
is that get request or get mapping? Is that path or any other thing? Do you remember?
I think not that.
So what happens when we keep this response body over the class?
Actually, it work as if I define like if I define the rest body on on the top of the controller. So what is this like? It will redirect all those requests and responses which is coming from the particular path, and request those things under the controller, with having the different parameters, like whether it is a get request, post request, or some other HTTP words we have used.
So what is the difference between at the rate controller and at the rate rest controller?
Yeah, sure. So at the rate REST controller actually combines both these controller as well as response body, and controller is basically the same. Controller is at the rate controller is a single. It has to be come up with the REST body, but if I instead of this, if I write the REST, if I say like REST controller, then these two things are not required.
Mhm. Okay, what methods you have used?
What method I have used? I have
I
used
mean, what are the rest methods you have used? Get, put, something like that
yeah,
you might have used, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I have used get, post, put, and delete, and
Mhm.
yeah. These are
Okay, so what are those methods? Can you explain each one of them?
yeah, sure, sure.
Why
So
do you get? Yeah.
yeah, sure. So basically, get HTTP verb is used to get the resources from from the cache, or the databases. To get the so you can only have a read control over there. And when I talk about the post, so it basically it basically give you the leverage to create a new resource, in the database, or in the transactional management which you have maintained. And when we talked about the put, so it basically according to the royal fielding, so it basically says like you can use to update the resources, and update the resources. It should not be used to insert the resource, but there are some scenarios where you can use the put request also to insert the resources. And delete is basically for deleting the resources, from the transaction management, or the DB itself. And like post, sorry, uh, put get and post, or sorry, put get and delete, or item potent. And post is not an item potent, so basically what it means like uh, idempotent is the property, like how many, if you take one resources and repeatedly call that, so it will impact the transaction management only one time. It should not create a new resource every time, or alter the resource every time. But when it comes to the post, so it is not idempotent. Basically it means like every time you request a particular response, each time it will create a new resource out of it.
Okay, so you haven't used patch, right?
Yeah, patches. No, I have not used, but patch is one of those things which suppose in the put I need to there's this privilege I need to uh, have to update all those parameters which I'm currently used in the resources. But I think what I have read is like patch is used if you wanted to update any of the parameters in the whole the context of the in the whole context of the API which you are calling.
Okay. Okay, so what annotations you have used in Spring Boot?
uh, Spring Boot I have used.
So firstly, what is Spring Boot application? At the red Spring Boot application, what does that do?
Yeah, sure. So Spring Boot application, built on the principle of the rapid application. So it basically, give a more leverage on the, building the logic rather than, writing down the boilerplate code. So it basically give the privileges to the developer to not to worry about, what other jobs are required. You can, you just focus on the logic. And it is mainly used for the development of, more responsive application, as it context with, less code, interoperability. And mm, and it is actually a lightweight application. And uh, yeah, this is pretty good.
Okay. So here, whatever syntax you have written, I think it's a little bit wrong. But consider that you have an API call in this controller demo, that is last sample, okay?
Mhm.
And front end wants to use that API call. So what will be the flow? So how does it come to backend? And it has to get the data from some DB. So what is the flow? What are the layers it will pass?
So basically, when it comes to any
So
request.
tell me, explain in your project how is it being used? How the API call comes to backend? What are the is there any middle layers which are used? So explain how it is used in your project, okay?
Yeah, sure, sure. So actually, initially, we had this two Spring Boot application, and these two are interacted by the REST template. So basically, in each of these, Spring Boot application, how the response coming is like, they fired out the response from the, from the browser, let's say from the browser. So it's basically, fired up and checks, and Spring Boot container actually, Spring container basically, checks out what are the beans it actually contains. So basically, suppose, in any of the classify, if I write like, component. So it's basically, what is tell the Spring Boot, Spring container is that, it basically act as an Spring, sorry, it basically act as an bean to that. So it will it will, contain all those beans. And once you try to follow this path. Suppose this path, if I'm giving like that, suppose, if I say, like something like that, this IP, and then this port. Okay. And once I check this out. So suppose if I say simple, and something like 1 2 3 4 5. Okay. So what is like, it actually checks out for the basically, every Spring Boot Spring, Spring frameworks looks out for dispatch servlet. So what it mean, like, whenever there's a request comes in, so it will look out for the resolver, for the view resolver. So once it's found a view resolver, then once it's found the view resolver, then it goes to the controller. So every time, it checks, every time a request comes in, so it goes to the uh, dispatch servlet. And once it's found a, view resolver and the controller, then again the controller, whatever the logic being written over in the controller, then it will process that, to the view, and it will pass it to the dispatch pattern, and then the dispatch servlet, sorry, give the response back to them. So what basically we have done is, like, we have created a two Spring Boot application, and we want to interact the both of them. So we use the REST template, since, since it is a synchronous one, since it is not synchronous asynchronous one. So, once we get the response from that, so we want to, communicate that particular, this Spring Boot application with the REST template, and giving having a different port out of it. And once we receive the data from any of the dispatch servlet, then we will pass on those to another, to another Spring Boot application, and then the flow goes on, and we have the two different set of DBs which are connected to that. So basically, these are two different transaction management going on in the background.
Okay. Okay, fine. So you have worked on microservices, right?
Yeah.
So how do you communicate between these microservices?
For the communication, initially what we are using is a REST template for the service discovery and all those things. And since actually as the project progresses on, so there's more microservices to we switch to use a client server. From there onwards, actually we try to figure out how to use the REST service discovery, and accordingly the communication happened between those.
So I didn't understand. So how you are communicating? Earlier you used to use REST template. Later what you are using?
I use a car.
Okay. Mhm. Okay. Do you know Java 8?
Yeah, I worked in my previous project for 5 to 6 months.
Okay. So you might have heard what are the features they have implemented.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you
So
explain me those?
yeah, sure. So basically, the most important feature they come up with is the interfaces. In interfaces, now you having static as well as default methods in it, and they also come up with the Stream API for the data processing, also the for the for parallel processing as well. And also in the hash map, initially when there's a collision happens, they are using the linked list. Now they are using the tree instead of the linked list. And also in the in the
They're using
in,
a I didn't understand. So earlier they used to use link list when there was a collision. So right now what's happening?
right now they are using a tree instead of a linked list.
Okay.
And also in the memory management, earlier they are using parent gem. Now they are using the meta space. It is new space which they have added instead of parent gem. And there are a certain date APIs which comes along with Java 8 features. So uh, you know uh, now you need not to implement another class like local. We used to do it. So there's this local date API comes in, local date time API comes in. So you need not to check, you need not to look out for the local implementation of it. It internally uses that local and give out the exit location time according to the zone which you are currently in. And
Okay. So you said you have heard about default and static methods, right?
yeah.
Why? What are those? So firstly, what is this functional interface?
Yeah, also, yeah, yeah. So functional interface is the one which contains only one abstract method, and it can have any number of static and default methods. So initially, before Java, it also there are some functional interfaces which are there, like comparable is a functional interface which is there, and also clone.
Why they have implemented this functional interface?
Functional interfaces basically what I have read is like to give a flavor of the to give the flavor of the functional paradigm, because the language is lacking behind the concept of reduction of the boilerplate codes. And I think
Have you heard of Lambda?
yeah,
Lambda
these are the
extensions?
anonymous function. Yeah. These are also introduced in Java 8.
Okay. So This default and static methods you said, right, in functional interfaces.
Yeah,
What are those exactly? Why they have introduced that? So they can implement the methods when we declare it as default or static, right?
yeah.
So even it is same for abstract class, I think. So we can just have abstract methods as well as
If,
hello.
if I reframe your question will like you why there's a need to introduce static and default method interface.
Yeah, and also,
Mhm.
what's the difference between this abstract class and functional interfaces?
So yeah, definitely. So in the abstract class, you can have n numbers of abstract method, but in the functional interface, you can only have one abstract method. You cannot have more than one abstract method in the functional interface. Also, when we talked about why they have introduced the static and the default methods in the interface. So suppose initially when they thought out like suppose you have an interface, and in an interface basically before Java 7 it basically means like if you have an interface basically it means like all the methods are abstract by nature. It should not be a static one. So suppose if it is on all abstract method, so any class implementing those interfaces need to implement like it is mandatory to implement all those abstract method which is being declared in the interfaces. Now suppose you have one class, that is okay, but if you suppose have thousand hundred of class implementing that particular interfaces, suppose you implement another method abstract method in the interface in the Java 7, then you have to mandatory implement all those methods and all the classes which is implements those interfaces. Now with the static and the default with the static and the default method, you need not to use those method if it has all been added after the implementation of those classes. So it is the class if the class one of those class needed that, then you can implement those method individually, not mandatory to use in all the classes. Hello.